Hey, and we are live. We'll give the machines the opportunity to catch up. But for those of you who are watching this on rewind, it might be a good idea for me to talk to you about what we are covering today before everybody else joins in. So you know that I cover global living and how to afford it here on this channel, and I've been covering the cities that I find interesting and places that I have considered calling home or I have already started to purchase real estate in. So I cover Medellin, Colombia, I cover Sicily, Musumeli, Sicily, and I've been covering Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And you'll see those are kind of like the reoccurring themes on the channel as far as global living is concerned. Why? Because I've set up my life to some extent in each of those places. Right now, I am in Medellin, Colombia. I have an office here where I employ tons of wonderful people who help me out with my companies and help staffing, home health care, here for the channel, and like my social media brand, as well as my property manager. So I spent quite a bit of time in Colombia, but I fell in love with Brazil back in 2019, very first time that I went there. And from that first visit, I realized that that was also a country that I would like to have a footprint in. Now, for those of you who started learning about this channel and learning about me, you would know that I have been advocating for buying cheap properties in Italy. A lot of the Italian towns, especially in the rural settings, have lost their population, really leaving behind these historic properties that have fallen into disrepair or just have been flat out abandoned. I've been covering that journey of how I've purchased some of them, and now I'm helping other people buy properties like that through my service, cheaphousesinaitaly.com. But naturally, you have to imagine that people are watching and kind of comparing what I'm sharing. Some people have an affinity for Italy, some people have an affinity for Brazil, some people are just interested in Colombia. And just the other day, I started thinking, I wonder if anybody's thinking, how do I rank and compare these different cities and countries that I'm living in? And what would I say are the pros and cons of some of these places? But in particular, I want to talk about Brazil and Italy because in the month of June, what am I talking about? In the month of January, I had covered Italy in detail. And now that it's February in the month of Carnival, which is a big deal in Rio de Janeiro, I am covering mostly everything in Brazil for the month of February. So I felt like there might be people who are wondering what it might take on each of those places. And people who may not normally be interested in Brazil are now being exposed to Brazil content, and people who may not be that interested in Italy have been exposed to Italian content, and they might be thinking, well, I kind of like both of these places, but what does Carl think, and how would he compare these two, and what does he have to say about that? So that's what I'm covering today. I just really want to give you my take on each of those countries, what makes them good in my eyes, what makes it bad in my eyes, and what sort of person do I feel would do best in each of those environments. Anybody who has any questions about Brazil or Italy at any point during this broadcast, use the comment section, use that little tracker on the side to ask your question. I love answering questions. It helps kind of direct this live. I don't really have a plan here. It's just me kind of rattling off and engaging with you all. So right now we have Charles in the house. Charles, what's up? How are you? I wouldn't mind a spot in Italy, but the issue is I can't gain citizenship there. So for me, Brazil and Portugal is the move. Oh, we could talk about that. I think I'm going to go back to that because I'm not sure why you can't get citizenship in Italy, but you see a pathway for citizenship and residency in Portugal, unless you're Brazilian or Portuguese. And if you were Portuguese, then you would be able to reside in Italy full time if you want to. But I'd like to get into that in detail a little bit. That's what you mean there. Brandon from LinkedIn, what's going on? Did you really buy a property for $1 in Italy? No, I didn't really buy a property for $1 in Italy, but there are properties that are selling for $1. The properties that I purchased I went there looking for dollar homes. I did a tour of dollar homes. The homes for $1, in my opinion, were just too far gone compared to the homes that were selling for like $5,000 and $10,000. So when I looked at buying a home for $1 and having to renovate that home versus buying a home for 5,000, the $5,000 home was just in so much better condition than the $1 home that I opted for the $5,000 home and the $12,000 home. Now, because $5,000 is still really inexpensive for real estate, I just refer to all of them as dollar homes. They're cheap. Even the $1 homes are going to cost you between $3,000 and $5,000 to buy anyway, because you have to pay closing costs, you have to pay taxes, you're going to have to absorb some fees to actually purchase those properties. It's not just you whip out a box, slap it on the table, and the deal is done. But to answer your question, literally, no, I did not buy a €1 home. Could I have bought a €1 home? Yes. Do I have people who are offering me homes for free? Yes. Do they exist? Yes. But I really find that the premium listings, the houses that are livable or need like minor repairs, are the better deal. Anthea, hello, how are you? My biggest issue with Brazil is crime. Yeah, that is a problem. So let's start talking a little bit about first the things that I like about each of the countries. Italy has kind of dominated Western history, right? If you look at Western history, it really has evolved a lot out of the Roman Empire, especially if you're talking about North and South American culture and like Western European culture, because a lot of the culture is rooted in Christianity, Catholicism, and the Roman Empire actually is responsible for the proliferation or the spread of Christian ideologies. And the West is mostly a Christian-focused system. Our laws, our culture is kind of rooted in Christianity. So because of that influence, we always reference back to Italy. So everybody has this strong kind of nostalgic attraction to Italy, from the artwork to the religious piece. So Italy has like this kind of historical sweet spot in a lot of people's hearts, especially in the West. Very well branded, beautiful architecture. It's a pleasant country to observe and submerge yourself in. Brazil, on the other hand, is a little more raw. And what I like about Brazil is that it's like this crossroads of reality. You have this mixing of cultures and people. You know, you have the African influence, you have the indigenous influence, you have the Western European influence. You have a pretty large German influence to a degree. You have all this strange mixing in this gnarly landscape, right? You have the Amazon, you have these rugged mountains. Brazil's a massive country with tons of weird animals and foods. It's like going to another planet sometimes. That's how it feels to me. Like it's like the Earth reimagined in a way. I really am fascinated by Brazil in that sort of way. And another thing that I like about Brazil is that the culture is high on having a good time and living in the moment and living for the people that you love, which is common in like the Romance countries, so like France, Spain, Portugal, Italy. That tends to be kind of the outlook of life, and that's something that I like overall. But in Brazil, it's pronounced, and there's also that sentiment superimposed on all of these other cultures that have somehow come together to create this one Brazilian identity. And there's also like this Brazilian pride, like every country is proud of themselves, but there's almost like a fanatical pride that Brazil has in itself, and they celebrate that diversity of people, and they celebrate their oddities, and that's what I really love. But it's that and the landscape, and the environment that in Brazil that it feels palatable. It feels like this raw, realer version of life, along with the danger and the crime that comes with that. So those are the two attractions for me. Now, if we were to start comparing economies, the Italian economy um, seems to be more secure because it is part of the EU. They are kind of obviously fixed to the euro. Um, there seems to be better infrastructure, and social systems seem to work a whole lot better in Italy versus Brazil. Um, Brazil, on the other hand, is a much larger nation in population. So Brazil has about 210 to 220 million people. I believe Italy is like 3 million. I can pull that up right now. Population of Italy. And Italy's population is on the decline, while Brazil's population is on the incline. Let's look this up. It's 59 million, 59.1 million people live in Italy. And let's see how they perform economically. So Italy ranking GDP. Let's see where they stand. So Italy is ranked number 8 in global GDP. So it's got a pretty robust functioning economy. It's within the top 10. And Brazil, rank GDP is number 12. So think about that. There's 59 million people in Italy with the 8th largest GDP. So the GDP per capita is going to be probably better than in Brazil. So Brazil has a smaller GDP, but a much larger population. That's kind of problematic, and why there's that element of crime and poverty and some of the sketchiness that is in Brazil. So when you're looking at economic opportunity, I feel Brazil is more of an emerging economy that can continue to grow and evolve. They have a fairly low cost labor force. I think the Brazilian minimum wage is around right now $200 a month. Meanwhile, the minimum wage in Italy is higher than that. So there's more potential to grow and groom that workforce, manufacture more, be more of a world player. Um, so with that emerging economy, there's opportunity for growth and growth potential, right? So if you're looking to go somewhere and potentially ride that growth wave as that country continues to develop, Brazil kind of wins there. But if you're looking for stability and kind of security in the financial system, Italy seems to have a better footing in that regard. So, of course, with economics comes infrastructure and relatively low crime. So, overall, when I look at those two countries from a social and a people standpoint, the people in Italy are awesome. I documented that. They're close, tight knit, etc. They're social. They like to embrace the moment. They're both are very similar in that way. Of course, dance is different, interactions are different, but they're rooted in that same let's get together and live life the best way possible with whatever we have. But where things kind of go off the rails for both of these countries, like the negatives or the cons, is that the cost of living is obviously slightly higher in Italy than it is in Brazil. Um, Italy can experience winters. Brazil Most of Brazil doesn't experience a proper winter, so the weather is hot to mild. Like if you go down to the south, they have winters like closer to Uruguay and Argentina, but it's not going to be like a northern Italian winter. So depending on where you are in Italy, you kind of dodge winter to a certain extent, or have a more mild winter if you're further south. But I like hotter, balmier weather. So you have more of that weather year round, especially in Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro's weather, I would say, is closer to Miami, where you have a hot winter and like really hot summers. So even in the middle of winter, you could still have a beach day because it's possible. I like that. I like having that balmy weather. So from a weather and temperate standpoint, I kind of give the nod to Brazil. And I really don't like kind of having proper winters in any country. I'm kind of trying to avoid winter for the rest of my life. So that I would say is kind of another negative with Italy compared to Brazil. Um, Outside of that, when we start looking at the negatives in Brazil, Brazil has a few more negatives that I think are concerning for most people. Um, there is a larger wealth gap between the poor, middle class, and wealthy. Like the middle class exists in Brazil, but it's not as robust as the American middle class. Uh, Poverty is still a major thing. It's a major experience in Brazil. And then you have like a kind of small, uber wealthy class. And because of that disparity in wealth, come that a lot of that senseless crime, and you're gonna come across those pockets of poverty all the time. So if you're traveling through Brazil, it's not uncommon to see large kind of shanty towns with all favelas, which is like kind of rogue developments, poor environment. It's like literally just best way to kind of describe it is disorganized urban development, utilizing, you know, materials and supplies that impoverished people can afford. And you're going to come across this often. So if you don't want to come across these pockets of poverty, you don't want to see it, it's gonna be hard to avoid that in Brazil. And you're going to find people who are conflicted with that and say, well, man, it's in such a better position. Some of these people having to see poverty bothers me, right? They're not going to see that. And plus, with that poverty, you're going to have sometimes those socioeconomic clashes or the consequences of poverty. For example, you got a premium cell phone that's 5 months minimum wage for somebody. You have a large unemployed young male population that's going to result in gang violence, drug violence, and petty crime. This is universal in the world amongst humans. So that's an unfortunate reality of Brazil. But I'm not too threatened by that. Like, you have to be a little bit on heightened awareness to kind of deal with, not getting robbed. Like, you're going to be conscious of which pocket you have your cell phone in. You're going to be conscious about how you appear in certain environments. You're not going to want to look like a target. When in Italy, you don't have that same crime awareness. Even though people say, "Oh, what about the mafia?" Mafia is a more organized crime. It's not like it's a different sort of crime that you're dealing with, a different sort of social nuisance. And then in bigger cities in Italy, like bigger cities throughout the world, there's going to be crime, that sort of stuff. But it's definitely different. I would say that I move around and feel safer in Italy than I do in Brazil, but that doesn't mean that I won't feel comfortable being there with my family, with my little girls. And if I get robbed, when I'm in South America, whether it's Medellin or Brazil, I always have this threat that I can be robbed, right? No different than if I'm in certain parts of New York City. There's always an underlying threat of physical violence and robbery, right? This is the environment that I grew up in. So I'm not so threatened by it. I just know that I have to adjust myself. And then I have conditioned myself that, hey, if I even get robbed in these areas, um, it's almost like a social tax because the guy who robs me for my cell phone, maybe he can buy his mom medicine or, buy milk for his kid or whatever the case may be. I know that difference might be a major difference. And me replacing a cell phone is a lot easier for me than that person earning $1,000. So, I don't know. It doesn't bother me so much, but I know that a lot of people are concerned with safety, especially if you didn't grow up in an environment that was higher on crime. I grew up in New York City in the 80s and 90s. It was higher on crime. I got used to it. So it's not that big of a deal for me. But overall, when you look at the final thing that you're going to want to think about, I think infrastructure-wise, there's a lot of better infrastructure in Italy, but there is pockets of really good infrastructure in Brazil. Like you can find good hospitals, you can get good services, you can find great restaurants, like metros. All those things exist, highway system. But I feel like Italy's a little more advanced. But finally, when you're looking at cost of living and what you get for your money, I feel like the cost of living is lower in Brazil, especially when it comes to like workforce when comparing to Italy. Like cost of living in Mussomeli, Sicily is like Caltanissetta has the cheapest living expense in all of Italy. It's the most affordable place to live. So I can get by on as an individual on $600 to $1,000 in Mussomeli and be fine. And I could probably do the same in Brazil, but the neighborhood that I'm going to be in Brazil, I might be on the edge of social issues, and I might experience some hardships that I wouldn't experience in Italy for that same price point. But if you start to compare Sao Paulo to Rome, Rome is going to be much, much more expensive than Sao Paulo. So it's like on the lower end, they're comparable, but I would give, like, if you're going to be living on a tight budget, you probably would do better on that tight budget in a place like Mussomeli. But if you have a larger budget and you're in prime Rio de Janeiro or prime Sao Paulo versus prime locations in Italy, your dollar's going to go much, much further in Brazil. But overall, if I had to choose a place to spend the rest of my life, this is my take on things. If I had to live anywhere, Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, or Sicily for the rest of my life, raise a family, I only had one place to pick, I'm going to pick Brazil. With the crime issues, with the cons that I discussed, I'm picking Brazil. Like, just because, I don't know, I love that place. There's something, when I'm there, it feels like I was made for that environment. Like, I really feel like I belong there. And I don't have that same feeling in Italy. And it's hard to describe. Like, there's some places you set foot on the ground and just like, well, this feels like I have some ancestral history here. You have people who go to Italy and they feel that way. For me, I feel that way when I'm in Brazil. I feel like I belong there. So if I had to pick between the two, I'm picking Brazil. And lastly, we all know who's got the better football team. So if you want to be on the winning side and enjoy like a passionate soccer culture, Brazil's got it. So I'm going to turn over to the questions now. For those of you who listen to me rattle on and on for the past 20 minutes, I respect you. But let's get into the questions and see exactly how it goes. So is my audio bad or are we good here? Because I see one comment that says audio check. Okay. So first, Charles was saying something about citizenship. So in Brazil, you can get citizenship through investment. I think if you buy a property for 200 to 250,000, that'll qualify you for residency and put you on a citizenship path. If you have a child with a Brazilian citizen and that child is born in Brazil, you can qualify for residency. If you get married, of course, it puts you on track for residency and citizenship. So those are, getting married is kind of easy. Having a kid may be easier, but obviously there's going to be, some lasting effects. But for the 200 to $250,000 price point, you can buy, nice real estate in Brazil and get your residency there, and not really have to deal with citizenship and as complicated as a visa process. However, in Europe, in Italy, they have these retiree visas that if you can prove retirement income, you can live there. I think like 10-year blocks, they approve those. There are some golden visa programs, some invested visa programs. They're doing a digital nomad visa program in Italy. So I wouldn't say that that Italy would be off the table. Thea says her husband speaks Portuguese in Brazil. Yeah, Brazil. Is he Brazilian or does he speak Portuguese like from Portugal? I'd like to hear more about that. I blacked out for a second. I clicked out of the broadcast. Sorry about that. Trying to scroll through comments here. I am back. Okay, so Goliath says audio check. Did you get Italian citizenship? No, I did not get Italian citizenship. Not pursuing Italian citizenship either. Uh, haven't looked into the process. Don't really. I'm not looking for Italian citizenship. But I think if you're going to get Italian citizenship, you should consult an immigration attorney and see what are their pathways. Like I said, you could start. I know you can start a business there, qualify for business visas. You can make large investments, and I think that qualifies you as well. You can get a retiree visa. But owning real estate, especially these cheap properties, does not qualify you for residency. You're going to be on whatever visa you have. Like the American visa gives you 90 days with a potential for 180-day extension, or another 90-day extension for a total of 180 days, but you're typically going to be 90 days at a time. I'm not an Italian citizen. I'm an African American. From my research, it's actually easier for me to gain citizenship in Portugal, since both countries are part of the EU. That would be better. Oh yeah, probably. I think Portugal might have some friendlier pathways. But thank you for confirming that. Pharrell, what's going on? What's your question? Okay, let's see here. Do ENTPs and INFPs are different from each other and how? I'm not that deep into the MBTI to really get into the nitty gritty of things, but I know some INFPs that are really cool. I have a niece who's an INFP. I have a former employee that's an INFP, and they're both awesome. They're tend to be creatives, tend to be open-minded, tend to be go with the flow sort of people. They're kind of like your silent, like rider. I don't know how else to describe it, but I don't know. You'd have to consult with somebody else on that. I love both places and have a lot of family in Brazil. Really interested in buying Rio, but concerned that property would it be close to investment grade? Well, it depends on where you are, because, and it depends on what you're doing. So if you're in Rio and your price point, everything, I guess we need some more details. But since rents are since people make less money on average, like rents aren't high. So like let's just say you spent $200,000 on an apartment, maybe that's something that you could rent for $900, 1,000 a month. Meanwhile, I've got investment properties that I purchased for $200,000 in the States that I can rent for $2,200 a month in today's market. So sometimes dollar per dollar it doesn't quite match up, but there are definitely like parts of the greater Copacabana area that real estate values are high and they continue to grow because of proximity to the beach, proximity to downtown, proximity to the airports. You get appreciation there. I know where I bought my property in Cabo Frio, property values have increased. So there's been some appreciation there as well. And there are more people, like the city of Cabo Frio is growing. So you have young professionals relocating and establishing and setting their footprint there. So I would say that there's some potential, but then I can see the differences. Audio is not good, heavy echo. Oh man, let me see if I can switch my audio source and if that helps. Default mic. Okay, that's what. Man, I think this audio should be better. Let me get back. I'm talking guys about the audio. Is that better? Just let me know if that is working better. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. It's better. Wait, what? You sitting right there and you didn't tell me? See, these are the wonderful people I have around me. These are the type of people that you have like a booger hanging out your nose and they don't even tell you. Thanks, man. It's all good. Oh man, you could have interrupted. It's not not a big deal, but thank you. What smaller Brazilian city would you suggest? Something close to the beach and airport. Close to the beach and airport. Well, I would say Cabo Frio because Cabo Frio has an airport. It's like a kind of like a general aviation airport. You could probably get a shuttle flight from Copacabana to there. Cabo Frio, I think they have like 100,000 population of 100,000. My property is in this area called Foguete, which is I guess translates to rocket. I don't know why it's called that, but it's kind of a quiet side of Cabo Frio. It's kind of just a beach town, and Cabo Frio as a city has like all the things that you need. So that's the areas that I know, and it's relatively affordable. I would say you could get like a 2-bedroom apartment. Okay, I stayed at Airbnb recently in Cabo Frio itself, and that I spoke to the owner, and I believe she paid 300,000 reais, which is about 60,000 US dollars for a 1-bedroom condominium in a new development 2 blocks from the beach. So $60,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment, I think is pretty affordable. You could get a 2-bedroom apartment for like even in like the closer to the heart of the city, 3 blocks from the beach, from the main beach over there, which is Praia do Forte, and that's going to cost you like $600 a month. So from a like you could buy real estate for like 80, like a house, a freestanding house from like 80 to 200,000 range. Like if you're going beachfront, you're going to be closer to that 200,000 range to own a house. If you are, so 100, 200,000 is going to be proximity to the beach versus town. You could get condominiums for like that $50,000, $60,000 price and up. Obviously, there's always up, but I would say Cabo Frio, and like you're about a 2 hour, 2.5 hour drive to the main Copacabana area. So if you want to be in that type of a city, you can get there quickly. Then you're like half an hour away from the next tourist town, which is Buzios, and it's nice there. Um, I like Cabo Frio. That's why I bought there. I'm not going to really get into that today, but I think I think yeah, maybe in another episode. I wanted to detract too much from the topic. Steve Marks, in terms of percentage, how many Italians in these rural cities have basic English speaking skills? Basic. Well, we got to define what is basic. Um, you'll find a few English speakers. The kids, like, we would come across children in town, and they would come and try to drop some English words on us, some better than others. Then you could find the high schoolers who again wanted to practice English. So there's enough English speakers, but if you're going to submerge it, if you're going to go, I'm going to sound like a jerk. If you're going to go to a country, do yourself a favor and learn the language. You're going to have a much better experience if you learn the language, especially if you're going to live there. If you're just going there on vacation, you'll start picking up things either way, but you're going to have a much richer experience learning the language by far. But you'll find enough people to survive. You'll find a few really good English speakers, etc. Hope that answered your question. Okay. Are the black people in the areas of Italy you talk about most? What? Sorry. Are there black people in the areas of Italy you talk about most? No, not really. It's a mostly white country. And in a rural area, you're going to have even less diversity. So very few black people in Musameli. And you shouldn't concern yourself with that, because it's kind of to me, an irrelevant thing. I know, as I have to assume that you're, an American with that question, because it's a concern for American people. There is a true Black American subculture, and there's a tendency to be concerned with acceptance, and feeling like you fit in, but you have to realize that you are an American, and the Italians are going to see you first as an American. They're not going to have this bias or anything like that towards Black Americans, or kind of consider you a second class American the way that we would in our own culture. It's kind of bizarre that is that way in the United States, but when you go to other countries, what you'll find is that you're just another gringo, or you're just another American, and they'll talk to you about rock and roll, or things that your average Black American wouldn't be concerned with, but they just lump you all together as just being American. So you don't have to be, if you go to Musameli, you don't have to be worried about your race. You don't have to be worried about how they're going to treat you because of your race, because they're going to first see you and they're like, oh, another American coming to buy a 1 euro home. That's the first thing they're going to think. And they're going to want to show you what makes their little village a wonderful place. So that's the first thing that's going to be going on. Like, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb, because imagine if, like, I had one of my buddies, he came out and he's like, I would say solid 6'5", 260, lean, looks like an NFL player. So your average Sicilian is kind of short. So this dude is like, they think I'm tall, and this guy towers over me. So he sticks out like a sore thumb. So people are, of course, looking at him, and he was kind of like, am I getting these looks? I was like, no, you're getting these looks because you're freakishly big. and obviously not from here, not because they have something negative or they feel anything. And he had a good time as well. So I'm only elaborating on this because I want to reassure people in America who feel marginalized because of how they've been kind of socialized in the States. By leaving America and going to some of these other countries and approaching it with a blank slate, you could start to unlearn the BS that gives you that racial anxiety that a lot of blacks in America have, especially when they're abroad. So please, like, take the time to travel a bit more and try to shed that because it's not doing you any good. Charles, I want to do a 6 month split between the two. Brazil during our winter, Italy and Portugal during the summer. Yeah, so you're gonna if you're gonna do this like a 6 month split, um, the challenge is that most of those visas are 90-day visas. So if you get residency in Brazil, obviously you could be there for more than 6 months, not a problem. The Portugal side or the EU side, um, you're gonna have to figure out that 60-day stay. I mean that 6 month stay without kind of being rejected the next time you come back in. And maybe that's something I could start trying to cover a little more in detail because these are questions that come up a lot, like residency visa. I'm just not an expert in it, and I haven't chosen to live in the EU just yet to really deep dive on the residency side. Right now, I have residency, not residency, but I have like extended visa privileges in Colombia um, because I plan on being here more than 6 months at a time. So, it's something I would like to cover, but thanks for sharing that. Yeah, audio not good. Thank you. Thank Israel. Greetings. Your audio has a bit of an echo. Yeah, I'm sorry. And you're back. Okay. Here's Steve Marks. I plan on buying a cheap $5,000 to $10,000 house in Italy and renovate it myself. Cool. Is this frowned upon? What I mean by that is doing the work myself to save money takes away from the, oh, hell no, it's not frowned upon. You might get people to even come and start helping you. Like you'll be amazed. You know who's going to frown upon that? Some person in the comment section is going to frown upon that. They're going to first say, "Oh, you're despicable for buying this cheap property that was meant for Italian families." You find those retards. No offense to anybody that would be classified as such or the term. I don't mean anything bad about it, but you find those people who are just negative people. They might say something about that. The locals there are going to be curious about what you're doing on the inside. They're going to volunteer their help and services. They might try to, get some work out of you, but they're not going to frown upon it because they're just happy to see life coming back. And they're going to be so curious about who you are and what you're importing to the country and what do you think and sharing their fresh pressed olive oil completely you're going to feel totally welcomed. And it's going to be a fun project. So if that's what you plan on doing, you could totally do it and pull it off without feeling anxious or anything like that. And then when you do need extra hands, because there may be times where you're like, man, I need to speed through this, or I don't have the skill set. Maybe it's electrical, maybe it's plumbing, whatever your weakness might be. You're going to be able to find people in town to hire fairly affordable for fairly low prices to help you get through some of the tasks. Even if it's just like some of the, you might need help lifting or whatever. You'll be fine. Much better. Thank you. It's sorry. Sorry. So what was happening was my camera all the way over there was picking up my audio rather than the mic in front of me. Sorry about that. Robert Joseph. My girlfriend and I are heading to Rio next month. We will keep our eyes open for real estate opportunities. We were in Cartagena last year. Prices were attractive, but rental terms weren't so good. Could you expand on that? Um, we went to Cartagena, and last year prices were attractive. But so what I think what would be good in your it's like to kind of give some context. How much do you want to spend on the real estate? Do you want to buy? Do you want to rent? And then I could kind of give you an idea. And if this your first time going to Rio, and if it's your first time, I think you're gonna want to. I don't know how long you're gonna spend there, but you're gonna want to check out. Like I'm even doing posts on like the area. So you have like Copacabana, which is obviously what everybody knows. Ipanema, Leblon. That's like the main areas. Then you got Barra da Tijuca, Recreo, uh, Guarachiba, further south from there. And then you go in the opposite direction, you start coming across Cabo Frio and Buzios. You should see those places to kind of see what feels more like your speed, your kind of place. Some people are going to want to be in the heart of the tourist zone action. Some people are going to want to get away from that. And the prices are going to vary depending on those places. Bobby Caldwell, how do your Airbnbs in Musameli do with horrible? Like I'll be lucky if I have uh, $300 of revenue in a month. That would be a good month. I never advised anybody to go to Musameli to set up an Airbnb. It is a small town in the middle of the island. And if there's going to be visitors, they're coming for a wedding in the summer. They're coming to visit family or grandma. They're spending a few days there. They're coming to check out cheap property. Um, you can't. You'll be lucky if you had 40% occupancy at any given time. So I do it just to accommodate people who are coming to purchase real estate. I do it to get new people into the house, to get new Airbnb reviews. And the house would otherwise be sitting empty. My other house, the house that I stay in with my family, is empty during until we're there for the summer. So the house that I show on the channel, I just did it for the sake. I could have spent $40,000 setting up rental apartments in the United States that would make me $4,000 a month. I wouldn't spend $40,000 to make $200 a month. That doesn't make any sense, and I wouldn't advise anybody to do that. The next thing is I watch all your videos on Family and interested in having a summer vacation home there to rent out the rest of the year. I wouldn't do that. I like if you get the summer house to enjoy in the summer. That's when everybody's going to be there. That's when you're going to have the best fun and or the most fun. And during the rest of the months, if you could rent it out to somebody on a long term, $150 a month, you'd be lucky. These are not places that you'd be building out a portfolio of any kind of investment property. So I wouldn't do that. If you're looking for investment properties, you're going to have to go to like cities that are traveled to more frequently throughout the year. And in Sicily, their travel season really runs April to October. Is when people start going to the coast and things to warm up enough that the coastal living is good. So if you get a house in Musameli, get a house to hang out in Musameli, have a base in Sicily. You know, it's a 2-hour drive to Palermo. So if you're going to spend your summer in Sicily, you can have your house, bounce around. I think it's a good thing to have. Like I like that I have that house, and I think it's a wonderful bonus for my family. But from an investment standpoint, I do not advise it. I think it's a bad idea. Yeah, you know, so you're dealing with that. I'm actually like I love talking about race uh, for educational purposes because the race dynamics of the United States are really bizarre when you look at the rest of the world. And the nuances are hard to really explain to strangers because they don't get it. But America is such a weird racist place because the racism and how it manifests in the United States is like direct but subtle at the same time. And I'm not saying that because I'm somehow oppressed or no, I do really well. I don't feel threatened most of the time unless I'm, interacting with police. But the way that things are set up creates that same anxiety that you had. Like you are thinking about what is the percentage of black people in another, what most people in the world do not think that. It's not something that comes to their mind when they're thinking about where they're going to go. So to talk about that and explain how that has come to be and how does it manifest and how does the government somehow reinforce that till this day is such an interesting topic. And whenever you see me talking about race here, it's really because I like the subject and how complex and complicated it is, but not because I subscribe or have allowed that to shape my identity by any stretch. So I get kind of defensive when I see people talking about race because I know how detrimental race has been to people in my family, to friends, and it's sometimes self-reinforced or reinforced within Black communities or reinforced within Black households more so than it's reinforced by the larger majority of population. So it's like it's such a complex topic. But when I'm on this channel, I try to expose people to thinking differently and taking chances and find the pleasure in learning new things about themselves and other places in the world. So I hope you experience the same, or I hope that's what you get from following the channel. Charles, agree. They won't see you as African American, but as American. Passport privilege is a real phenomenon. Yes, there's racism around the world, but it's nothing like in the U.S. It's so different because like you'll get direct, blatant racism in like a soccer match, right? In a way that you wouldn't see happen in an NFL. Like you won't see people making monkey sounds to an NFL player, right? That would be over the top. But when players were kneeling, there was like this subtle like us them. It's weird. It's completely different. I could take the blatant racism because it's just like, oh, whatever, dude, man, you're talking nonsense, and I move on my way. But it's that there's something different in the United States that is so hard to like put your finger on because it's not like in your face hardcore like it was maybe 70, 80 years ago. It's so different, man. Oh, you're welcome. As hardware stores, are hardware stores hard to come by? For example, Vivona. So Musameli has a few hardware. Like think about it like this. In Musameli, the town functions. It's like I said, 10, 11,000 people, something like that. So you have plumbing supply stores, you have HVAC stores, you have electrical equipment stores. They're small, like little storefronts, like deli sized. Like if you're from New York City, you know what I'm talking about. It's like 15 feet by 15 feet in size, something like that. And they're selling supplies that you need. But then there is like almost like an Ace Hardware type of store, or like it's not as robust as Home Depot, but I would say compare it to like an Ace Hardware. They have stores like that. What is it called? It's a chain there, but there's one in Musameli. So you could get building materials, you could get supplies, you could get them shipped to you. It's not like you've somehow fallen off into no man's land. There's hospitals, they have what you need to get things done. What you will not find, or what there's not going to be a lot of diversity of, are decorating options. So, for example, my house,
every time I'm trying to buy furniture that is a little more unique, that the Amazon stuff isn't cutting it, the local furniture stores don't have what I'm looking for. I got to drive, 2.5 hours to either Palermo or Catania to find like diversity in decorative products. So decorating is going to be tough sourcing your items from Musomelli, but actually getting the raw construction materials that you're going to need to just maintain a house, they have all that there locally. Cements, wiring, screws, drywall, those sort of things. First time going to Brazil 1 week. Oh man, 1 week is just not enough. So you're gonna see like the traditional kind of Zona Sul area. Um, I like the neighborhoods the places that I would pick to live as they are right now, in order of preference, would be Leblon, Ipanema, Barra da Tijuca. Leblon because it's nicer and more upscale. Ipanema because it's kind of like Leblon Junior, and Barra da Tijuca because it's kind of like the new urban development, so things are spaced differently. It's kind of planned a little bit better and away from the tourist zone. And then I'm looking at one other area in the downtown Copacabana, like downtown Rio de Janeiro area, that I'm going to be highlighting in just a few weeks, um, that I feel has a lot of potential for people who are willing to take a chance. Um, I'll tell you now. So that's like in the Santa Teresa, Lapa area. It's run down right now, but it's very close to the city center for Rio de Janeiro. So it's near all the corporate offices, near downtown. It's pretty much gone through like the suburban flight, and I think you're going to start to see people coming back there. You're starting to see it already. Uh, After I'm done with my project in Cabo Frio, so that should conclude in like November or December of this year. The next project I'm going to do is one of those properties in Lapa or Santa Teresa. What airport and train station is close to Musomelli? Airport is going to be Palermo. Train station is the Aquaviva train station. But then you're going to need a pickup from there. But yeah, so you would take your flight into Palermo, transferring from Madrid or wherever your connection point is going to be, and then from there there's rail systems, and the closest stop to Musomelli is the Aquaviva Platini stop, and that's like 10 to 15-minute drive from that point to Musomelli. I've never taken the train myself, but I know somebody who has. His experience is pretty gnarly, but I met him there, picked him up at the train station. And when he was in Musomelli, like, you could rent a car a lot cheaper in Musomelli than you can in Palermo. So he trained into Musomelli. I picked him up. He stayed, in my place. And he rented a car in Musomelli, and he was bouncing around the island at that point. So you have some options. It's 8:00. I'll just get through these last questions and I'm out because I got to eat dinner. Are you actively looking to buy a place in Zona Sul in Rio to run as a short-term rental? No, I'm looking to buy a place in Santa Teresa or Lapa. I will convert it to a short-term rental because, better than sitting around empty. I would, if I were doing something there, I wouldn't do I would do a purchase if I was trying to achieve residency in Zona Sul. And I would try to focus. If I was buying something in Zona Sul, I would try to focus on buying something that had more than 4 bedrooms, because a lot of the properties are smaller, 1, 2 bedrooms, older buildings, and when they were built. So you don't find too many 4-bedroom plus. So if you have a group, there's not many options for it, and that's where you're going to get value. So if you find something, those are going to be like penthouses, more elaborate, but that would allow you to qualify for residency and will do well on Airbnb for like the larger groups that are traveling for weddings, bachelor parties, that sort of stuff. Because there's not many options and you could charge a premium for it. But my personal properties, I bought in Cabo Frio because my wife and daughters love the beach, and I do too. And I'm 1 block, to the beach, and it's like a private, quiet, windy beach, great for kite surfing and stuff. So I bought there. Can I rent that out? I'll probably be able to rent my house out for $100 a night, maybe 60% of the time. So maybe I make a little bit of money on that, $1,500 a month. Who knows? $1,200 maybe. And then the property I'm gonna get next is just because I feel like I'll be positioning myself early, and I kind of like the neighborhood. I like to take on weird projects, but I wouldn't consider that investment grade at this time. Steve Marks, some costs I could not find while searching myself were things like internet. That's like $30 a month. What are some of your ongoing monthly costs, and perhaps people overlook? Okay, so Musameli, that's a good question. Monthly cost, you're going to be in like the $150 or less range. So internet's like $30, water, electricity, depending on usage, call that like another $80 to $100. And then your taxes are going to be like $600 a year. So let's call it $200 a month carrying cost, if that. Because if you're not paying for internet while you're not there, and you're not utilizing much water, your connection fee might just be 20, 30 euros a month. Your electricity might be like 50 or 60 euros. It's such a negligible amount. I actually don't pay attention to it, but I would say 150 to 200 should be your all-in carrying cost once you own. More than that, not necessary. If you're making out your primary residence, you could declare prima casa, and you don't pay property tax on your primary residence, from what I heard. So you could get rid of your $600 annual tax bill, which is nothing in my eyes. Internet's $30, internet and garbage, and that sort of like internet, garbage, water, call that like 150-ish range, plus or minus $50, depending on usage. The thing that might surprise you is that water is on twice a week, like every 4 days. So, and it's a ration water. So everybody has water tanks in their home. If you have a small water tank, you might be in for a surprise after taking long showers every day for the first week that you're living there, that you ran out of water before the next water shipment. So it's advisable that you budget for adding some additional tanks. So I have like 2,000 or 3,000 liter storage capacity in one home, and then the other one's like 1,000 liter capacity, and I'm mindful of preserving water. So just that's something that I wasn't thinking about at all before going there. And then I knew that there was a water tank system because the water tank was there, and I was like, oh, there's a water tank, whatever. But I didn't know that I would run out of water on some days. And when that happened to me, I upgraded and got some more water tanks. Okay. So I'm going to take 2 more questions that I think are really good, and then I'm out. Quick question here. The webinar is tomorrow. So do I have any home health or home care? No, I actually don't really like home care. I could do one. I think, I would have to I could do one. But the next one that I have is tomorrow for healthcare staffing. So that's a quick one. And what's important there is the rules of how to price your nursing agency can help you price your private pay home care patients. Same sort of logic applies. So if you didn't sign up for that, sign up for it. There should be links all over the place. Sign up. See some costs. Quick answer on this one. Since it's considered a sacred/heritage region, are there opportunities to own properties in El Salvador? I would imagine absolutely, but I haven't been to Bahia to confirm that 100%. But I would say yes. Brazil is on sale like America is on sale, so you should be able to buy wherever. Thanks for your time. Greetings from Australia. Living and working in Germany. This has been truly great. Are you going to be able to port your job? Yeah, like you'll see that the cost of living is going to be a lot cheaper than in Germany. I would say Germany is more organized. You know how the Germans are, but Germany is more orderly and organized. Italy is a little more loose. You'll love it. Home care webinar. Thank you for doing this. You're welcome. Pharrell, man, because I'm not a Myers-Briggs expert, and I don't like talking about things I don't know. And Thea, he speaks Portuguese that he learned in Angola, Africa. I'm South African, and okay, cool, awesome. Jason, what's going on? Did you feel unsafe in Italy, Brazil, or Colombia? I answered that actually earlier. I'm glad that you brought it up. In Brazil and Colombia, I understand that there's an underlying threat, but I don't feel unsafe. And if I'm moving in certain areas, I know that I have to kind of be a little more aware and ready for the stick up if it were to come. Just like, you're in New York, you know how it is. Certain areas got to move a little tighter, and you're Colombian, and you know the same. Like, you know that you're going to be a little more on alert here than you are going to be, in Forest Hills, for example. If I feel like sometimes people in the U.S. have this idea that countries like Colombia and Brazil are more dangerous than, say, a city like New York. Yeah, they have the, yes, that is 100% true. A city like New York, you could get stuck up easily in a lot of neighborhoods, in some of the tourist zones as well. It can happen, right? You definitely could get shot in the United States, more likely to get shot there. But there is violent crime in Brazil. They get it popping in Brazil. So I wouldn't downplay it because it definitely goes down. But it's avoidable to an extent. Don't be flashy. Don't stand around alone late at night looking like don't give papaya, basically. Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree. People have a misconception of that. Yes, 250-gallon tank for like 4 days. So if you don't manage that properly, you could be screwed. And you'll see, like, on water delivery day, you see everybody's balcony, all the laundry drying out because the water's on for the day, laundry gets done, so they're not tapping into the tank. So all the water usage use the water now while it's running, and then the tanks fill up, and that carries you for 3 days or so. It's different. You get used to it though. Like when I shower, lather and scrub, turn off the water, lather and scrub, rinse off. I might use like 2 gallons in the shower, like, and move on. Because, the last thing you want are turds floating around your toilet and you can't flush it. So I'd rather save the water for that. I understand the concept of Italian time quite well. Oh, yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, Rio is much more dangerous than New York City. Rio with New York City crime rate would be paradise. Uh, yeah, I could see that, but New York City crime rate has been softer than it has been in other years. It's different, just because, like I said, there's that wealth gap, and because of that wealth gap, you get some pretty gnarly crime. Like you'll have times where there's like gang violence eruption or gangs against the federal police, and uh, the city's just closed for 2 days on advisory because it's better for you to be inside than to get involved in the gang police pseudo war. So, like I said, I maybe I downplayed a little bit because, like I said, I feel comfortable there, and I'm able to avoid most of the petty crime. I haven't fallen victim. My friend's ex-girlfriend, we were drinking all night, partying. They get into an argument at like 5 a.m. She decides to walk to the beach alone instead of go home. She didn't want, she's like, I'm going to just, enjoy the sunrise. And she got herself robbed while on vacation. But why the hell would you be on Copacabana Beach at 4 or 5 a.m. alone and drunk? Well, you don't want to blame the victim, but you have to imagine you just put yourself at high risk of getting robbed. You're a petite woman, foreigner. I was drunk and crying. You're a victim at that point. And the last comment: thanks for your time and valuable information. You're very welcome. Tuned in from Toronto, Canada. Cold. Looking forward to joining you as an international investor of a property that needs some love in Sicily. Awesome, man. Would love to see you participate. Oh yeah, and lastly, I haven't done any promo. If you're looking for one of these houses, check out my site, cheaphousesnately.com. You shoot us a message there. You're going to get an automatic response. Okay, that automatic response is going to tell you if you want to work with us. You book a call. The call is paid. Okay, the reason for that is that I don't like to spend my time with tire kickers. The properties that we're representing, if you buy one of them, then we'll credit you that $149. It's just that I don't like to. What I can earn in an hour of my time in my business is more than $149, and I don't want to spend time talking to people who are just asking the same questions of content that I've already posted. So if you are looking to buy a house in Musameli, you could definitely reach out to us and work with us. There's going to be a cost. Be prepared for that. But that cost gets passed on to your property if you actually pull the trigger. Second thing that I want to talk about is I will be doing a group investment in a tourist town. I am sourcing the right property. Once I have the property under contract and all the financials on that deal, I will be talking about it on the channel, giving you guys an opportunity to invest alongside me. This would be a vacation rental investment grade property. So higher prices. These aren't $5,000 properties. These are to the 100,000 range. Okay. But we're going to do a kind of a group investment with kind of timeshare elements where you could use it or rent your time or whatever, still designing what that's going to look like. So if you are interested in that, you could email me at invest@encplife.com. That's going to be for any investment projects that I'm doing, any collaborative investments. I also have my Killing the American Dream program, which is a program that teaches you how to invest in 1 to 4 family real estate in the United States, the way that I have done over the past 14 years, from 2009 to 2023. That strategy, first property I got was in 2006. I spoke about that. But if you go to invest@entplife.com, you can learn more about the group projects that we do. Like Jason, who I highlighted earlier, we did a project together in New Jersey, I believe. He was in that investment group. that we count out for a positive outcome. And he got to learn that flipping is not necessarily something he wants to do. So, but we made money, and he got to learn a great deal on that. And I believe he just bought a house as well himself. So there's a lot to learn through investing with us. There's a lot to learn through our programs. If you are interested, our Killing the American Dream program is a great way, structured on how I invest and how I've built a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio in the United States. You can check that out. I think it's a good program. And in the end, what else do I want to just kind of talk about? Cheap house in Italy. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You guys have yourself a good night. I'm going to grab some dinner, and be well. Like, subscribe, share. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.